Hi, friends. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, smash that subscribe button, tongue-tied, down below. Help the channel grow. Let's get the word out. Benny, where can they find us on social media?
Yeah, you can find us, Ray Benny Sports. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, also on Discord and Reddit, and leave us a rating on your favorite podcast provider.
Today, we got a special guest. As you can see, we have a third window. The president and CEO of Swaggerville, JOVON Johnson. Welcome to Ray and Benny. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. I'm happy to be on. I'm glad you guys reached out. You know, my ties to Winnipeg run deep, so I'm excited.
Yeah, we talked about your times in Winnipeg and how the weather is where you're at. You miss Winnipeg winters?
No, I don't. You know, that wind up there is brutal. You know, you got that swirling wind, especially when it's snowing. Winnipeg is one of those places, man. It's flat as ever, and you could just, it feels like you got the monster on your back.
Yeah, it was a good one yesterday. It hasn't been that cold here, but that wind yesterday made it cold. It's always the wind that messes things up around here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you got the wind swirling around in your helmet to make it even better.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about you. We know you're a great player in Winnipeg and around the CFL, but tell us about your football journey. What got you into football? What got you to go to a big university to play ball, to play in Pittsburgh, and then to come to Canada? How did it all come together?
Oh man, I mean, the journey for me was I started as a little kid in Erie, Pennsylvania, growing up in a rough environment. Quite honestly, I was more into playing basketball than I was football at a young age. But you know, we always played in the yard. You know, we played what we called fumble back in the day, where you just throw the ball up in the air, and when you get it, you got to try to score. And I think that's where my love for the game really came from. But I didn't pursue playing in an organized setting until I was in the 8th grade. But basketball was my thing. I was a point guard in basketball. You know, did all type of things with the basketball. And then 8th grade, two of my best friends actually um, reached out to me and was like, "Listen, we need you to play for our football team." And I'm like, "Football?" I'm like, "Yeah, I love it, but I don't know if I'm ready to put pads on and get and let people tackle me." Um, so you know, ended up encouraging me. They was just kept saying, "Man, you're good enough. You can do it. Like, just do it." And I ended up joining in the 8th grade, and I ended up coming out for the team. And first day of practice, coach throws me a football, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna put you at quarterback." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" You know, and then he's like, "Hey, it's just like playing point guard in basketball. I watch you play basketball. You know how you can distribute the ball and score with the ball when you have it. Like playing football and playing quarterback is essentially the same thing." He was like, "You're gonna give the ball to our great running backs, and sometimes we'll let you keep it and run. I mean, use your ability." And I mean, after a while, uh, practice got easier. You know, the scheme got easier. Started to learn, you know, all the different ins and outs about the game. My 8th grade team ended up going undefeated. So, you know, going forward, I started to say, you know, maybe this might be something that I might want to pursue. But I was still in love with basketball. It was like I could never let the basketball go. Um, so going into high school, I started getting a lot of attention from a lot of the high schools in the area. You know, coaches coming to my games, coming to our basketball games, you know, just talking to me. You know, it was my first real taste of recruiting. Um, and I was kind of like, I didn't know how to take it, honestly. Like I thought they were just like blowing smoke. I didn't really trust anybody at that time, especially growing up where I grew up. So I didn't know if they were for real or if they were like just trying to get my skills to use me.
Yeah.
Um, and then I ended up going to high school where all my friends went. You know, and it was one of those schools where, you know, we didn't have that much structure. Um, Predominantly colored. You know, just a lot of chaos, you know, fights every day, you know, a lot of different things going on in school.
Yeah.
I went there for 2 years, and in those 2 years, I was the quarterback for the football team. and we like thoroughly got our butts whooped weekly. I mean, we won one game in 2 years to just like paint the picture. I mean,
Yeah.
we had all the athletes in the world. If you ever seen our team on paper, we were legit. But as far as like executing and the things that it takes to be good at the game of football, we were
Hmm.
not very good at that because guys didn't come to practice. You know, guys just kind of did their own thing. It was just kind of like, just showing up and just playing street ball, and it showed on game day.
Yeah.
Basketball, though, we were amazing. Like our basketball team was a completely different structure. We were very good in basketball. We went far in the playoffs, and we had a amazing basketball team. But my guys that actually got me into playing football, they went to a prep school in the area,
Hmm.
and they told me to come, play with them at the prep school. So after my sophomore year, I ended up transferring to prep school, and I played there my last 2 years. It was a completely night and day situation. Discipline, everybody. When there was workouts, you had everybody at workouts in the off season. It was just a
Nice.
completely different atmosphere. Like the buy-in was there. Um, and then my junior year, we went 7-3, and then my senior year, we went undefeated. Um, so it was then that's when I really started to see like recruiting on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Like you got these big time coaches coming in, starting to see like personalities, relationships forming, and all these different things. Seeing coaches like trying to coerce kids to commit to them, and it
Yeah.
was it was like a auction, like a live auction. Like
Yeah.
who is the best player, and how can we coerce them to become part of our program. And it was crazy.
Jeez.
um but we got a lot of attention. Like we were in and out of class every day during the recruiting process, sitting with all these different coaches. You hearing some of these schools that you see on TV coming to visit. Like it was a whole different world. And I actually verbally committed to go to Kent State. And the guy that recruited me from Kent State, they wanted me to play both ways. I went there on a visit, and it was a great time. I had a great time, uh, and I verbally committed there. But then later in the process, Iowa came in, and the DB coach was sat in with a meeting with me and one of my teammates, the other corner that played on my team,
Yeah.
um, and he was actually recruiting him, and they were on him hard. Like they were like pushing for him hard. They liked him. 6'1", 190 pounds, ran the 10-3 and 100-meter dash. I mean, everybody in America was coming in to see the kid. I mean, he was an outstanding
Jeez.
player, state champion in 100 and 200-meter dash. So, he was getting recruited by everybody. But Iowa was on him heavy. But his biggest thing was he's not going there unless they offer his brother too. So he was like trying to get a package deal, and he ended up getting it actually out of Wisconsin. So him and his brother went to Wisconsin, and
Dang.
that day when Iowa was in recruiting him, they were like, um, "Who's this other kid? Like we see this other kid flashing on the film every other play. Like who is that guy?" And I'm like, "Hey, that's me. I'm sitting right here. Like you
Right
you
on.
don't have to look far to find out who that guy is that's showing up on film all the time." And
Yeah.
then I had to leave the meeting early, and I went down to basketball practice, and the DB coach actually stopped in at my basketball practice and asked if I could dunk a basketball, and told one of my teammates to toss me a ball, and I took off, dunked the ball, and he walked out. And I was like, well, hey, maybe he wasn't impressed.
Yeah.
And and then the next day they offered me a full scholarship.
Nice.
Wow.
So it was crazy, like how it all like ended up happening. But at the end of the day, I thought it worked out for the best, and ended up at Iowa. Um, it was a no brainer that I was going there. Once they offered me a scholarship, we had two Erie guys there, and Bob Sanders, the great safety out of Iowa, and then
Wow.
Ed Hinkle, who was also a receiver, but both played at Cathedral Prep here in Erie. So it was like home away
Uh-huh.
from home for me.
Mm.
I was comfortable. Like when I got there, over the summer after my senior year, I stayed with Bob, learned the defense, learned, the structure, learned how they did things in the weight room. I really got acclimated very easily because I was comfortable, being with guys that I had already knew.
Yeah.
And then from there, everything just kind of took off from there. Like, started as a true freshman, made all Big Ten, All American, freshman All American team. Sophomore year, I led the Big Ten in interceptions by corners. Junior year, it just kept going. It was just steady on the rise.
Yeah.
And then, after my senior year, I had amassed 17 total interceptions, second all time at Iowa history to now Kinnick, who the stadium is named after.
Wow.
And I was just another guy. Like one of my coaches said, when we first started recruiting you, you were a jag. And I'm like, what is a jag? He was like, you were just another guy. And I was like, hey, well, I'm glad I changed that narrative that you had about me. And
Yeah.
and from that point forward, when I went pro, everybody always questioned my size. Is he too small? Is he not fast enough? Can he jump high? Like all these different question marks. And
Mhm.
I would always tell them, if my eyes were above my eyebrows, would that make a difference? And they were like, well, look at me. They look at me with this stunned look on their face, like, what are you talking about? I'm like, doesn't matter if I was 6'2" or 5'9", I still get it done on every play. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, and then in my pro career, playing in Pittsburgh was amazing. It was an amazing experience, but I was kind of caught in between a coaching change. I was there my first year with Bill Cowher, my second year with Mike Tomlin. So it was like, caught in between that. It
Mhm.
was a struggle as a free agent guy. You know, you coaches come in. When a coach leaves, a new coach comes in, he wants his guys, the guys that he brought in, and I understood that at a later time in my career, but at that moment, I had a big chip on my shoulder because I knew that I was one of the better defensive backs in the room,
Yeah.
but it was a numbers game. And no matter how I felt or how anybody else in there felt, the coach was going to do what was best for the organization based on what he thought. And then I was waiting and waiting after I got released. And I had actually fired the agent that I had, and then I hired a new guy, and he was like, I got an opportunity for you in Canada. And I'm like, in Canada? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, one of my general managers from the CFL watched your film. He wants to bring you in. And I'm like, where? And he said, Regina, Saskatchewan. I said, oh, hell no. I was like, hell no. I'm like,
Yeah.
that didn't even sound like a real place. That sounds like somewhere in the North Pole. And and he was like, man, just maybe give it a try. I'm like, no. I was like, I'll wait it out. I'll wait
Yeah.
for an NFL team to sign guys. And I waited 3-4 weeks. I didn't get anything. And then I came back to him. I'm like, hey, if they're still interested, maybe I'll give this thing a shot and see what happens. And then he contacted them, and they were like, yeah, we want to bring him in, and he was like, we want to bring him in to play and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, all right, well, let's see how this goes. So I
Mhm.
fly into Fargo, North Dakota. And I'm like, I get off the plane and I'm like, where the hell am I? Like, what is going on? Like, I got off the plane and this little airport that was probably like the size of Walmart. And I walk in, they got one terminal. I walk in, grab my bag, walk right out. And I'm like, it was like a matter of 2 minutes. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh man, this is gonna be interesting. I got picked up by a host family who drove me from Fargo to Regina, which was probably like 6 hours.
Yeah.
It was a nice drive. And
Wow.
Did
and I
Regina
was
not
just
have an
like,
airport at this time, or what? That's
I mean, I
crazy.
don't know if I'm pretty sure they did. I
Yeah.
mean, they haven't changed anything, but I don't know why they flew me into Fargo, to be honest.
The money.
Maybe they were
See ya.
just trying to
Probably, yeah.
save
It's
them, yeah,
cheaper.
save some money. Uh, but I get into Regina probably about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. get dropped off at a dorm at the University of Regina, and the next morning show up to practice, and I'm like, okay, get suited and booted, get out there.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, it's some American guys around here. They speak the same language as me. Like it's normal. Like I'm in a place where I get to know some people. Maybe it'll work out. And they pissed me off the first week. First week, I'm already pissed off. Like they got me on practice squad. I get a paycheck for $500. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, what is this? So I go into the general manager office and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, you
Yeah.
told me you was bringing me here to play. I'm like, this is not going to pay me enough money to do anything. Like, I can't even buy food for the week with 500 Canadian dollars. And he was like, trust the process, trust the process. So I'm like, you know what? I'll make you play me. Don't even worry. Like, I'm going to make you play me.
Yeah.
So every day in practice, I was like, my number one goal in practice was to make them take me off scout team. So if you got me
Nice.
on scout team, you're gonna pay. I don't care if you go. I'm against the starting receivers. I used to have guys that were like perennial all stars in Canada. Like, please don't jam me at practice. Like, please, like guys like Andy Fantus, the receivers that you guys will probably be like, oh my God, like this kid was a
Yeah.
stud. I
Yeah.
used to have those guys terrified at practice. Like, I practiced so hard that it was like, there's no way they're not going to play me. So then they ended up playing me, and I played in one game. But at that time, I wasn't looking at the bigger picture because they were already winning. And it was like they already had their chemistry, and I was like an outsider coming in, and they didn't want to disrupt what they had going on. So I didn't understand that at the time
Yeah.
because of the chip I had on my shoulder. But in hindsight, like after the fact, I started to get it. But I went out there in the first game that I played. I had 10 tackles, forced fumble. I was everywhere. And I was
Balling.
playing the field corner. So it was like, I'm not really getting opportunities, but I'm coming off my man to go tackle other guys' men. Like, that's how hungry I am to never
Yeah.
see the time of day where they pay me $500. But so then the following week, they actually put me on inactive because I only played that week because the guy that was playing that position actually got hurt, and they played me. But then he came back off the injury after seeing me play. He was like, I can't let this guy get too many more reps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he ended up coming back off an injury and ended up playing. And we went to the Grey Cup that year. During the Grey Cup practice, how I ended up in Winnipeg, believe it or not, during a Grey Cup practice, it's probably negative 20 in Regina, and we're
Yeah.
practicing, and like during practice, nobody wants to be out there. So I'm like kind of trying to get the mood going. And Paul LaPolice tells Kerry Joseph, he's like, if you hit the receiver when he comes out of his break, woo, it's gonna be a big play. And I
Yeah.
mocked him at practice. So like I said it too, like in a joking way, like I was like seriously joking. And a couple guys on the team started laughing, and then they called me in the office after practice and was like, there's some guys on the team that feel like you haven't, acted like you wanted to be here since you got here. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm
Jeez.
in the middle of God knows where playing football. When you turn the film on, I'm everywhere. Like, what do you think I'm here for? Like,
Yeah.
I'm here to play football. Like, I'm not here to watch nobody. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to do what I need to do and get back down south. And I mean, I think some of that rubbed people the wrong way. But that was just who I was coming from where I come from. Like, I was always super competitive.
Yeah.
And then, so fast forward, we win the Grey Cup, but they put me on practice roster. So all the players got $18,000 for winning the Grey Cup. I got $500.
Oh, Jesus.
Shoot.
Wow.
In hindsight, I mean, yes, it was great that we won the Grey Cup. The greatest thing that could have ever happened to my career was the fact that they put me on practice roster. Because in 2008, like in the off season, Winnipeg called and they were like, "Hey, we want to sign you. with you being on the practice roster in Saskatchewan, that makes your contract null and void. We can bring you to Winnipeg, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. So I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm like, I get a new environment, new coaches, new players, new everything. Like, everybody's going to have to see, like, I'm going to get a fair opportunity. So go to Winnipeg in 2008, training camp. I probably intercepted the ball at least 50 times in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
without a doubt. There were days where I would have like 4 or 5 interceptions in a day, and it was just ridiculous. And then I ended up beating out a veteran guy. And then I played with some outstanding veterans like Kelly Malbro and those guys. They were amazing, but they
Yeah.
embraced me. It was like no hard feelings. They understood that I had a chip on my shoulder. Like, they embraced that though, and it was a
Yeah.
completely different atmosphere.
So then
But
with that, if I can jump in a second,
mhm,
you've been talking about how people discounted you because of your size, having a chip
yeah,
on your shoulder, making some
yeah.
noise in practice, being the energy maker. Like, I'm gonna jump more into your Winnipeg playing time. Is that kind of where the popular Swaggerville came from? Is that where that attitude came from to establish Swaggerville? And how did that bleed into Winnipeg culture? And how did you establish that when you were here?
I mean, I think part of it was in 2009. So 2008, we had a fairly decent year. We ended up going to the playoffs. We lost in the playoffs in the first round to Edmonton
Mm,
at Winnipeg. They were a good team, but we probably still should. We didn't play the best. But in 2009 is where Swaggerville actually started to evolve. It was the first time that I was paired up with guys like Jonathan Hefney. We had Ike Charlton at Sam. We
oh,
had Keo Craver at the other corner. And then we had Lenny Walls, the long field halfback. Like, we were dynamic in the secondary. Like, the talent level across the board was amazing. And that, like, we just formed a bond in the meeting room where, every day we were like challenging each other, who's going to have the most interceptions, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. Like, that was the way we kind of operated. And then we always would say, like, we play with tremendous swag. So, like, everybody, would just say swag every time we made a play, is be like, that's that swag. Like,
yeah,
if you knew, like, the guys, it started out just being just the secondary guys, because, like, that was our motto. Like, we're gonna play with swag. Like, let's go out here and play with swag, take over the game and dominate. And that's where it all started. And then 2010 kind of got reformed. It wasn't until 2011 that it really came to life, but
yeah,
2010 was like the becoming of it, because we went from veteran guys that had been around, that were like probably a little bit past their prime, besides me and Jonathan Hefney,
yeah.
to Clint Kent, Alex Suber, Brandon Stewart, me and Jonathan Hefney, and then Ian Logan. Like, we were all young. Like, we were like young, wild,
Yeah,
and hungry. Like, it was
hungry.
like hungry dogs. Like, every day the competition. And then we had guys like Odell Willis and Philip Hunt at DN. We had Joe Lobandon and those guys. Defensively, like, we were amazing. Like, it
Yeah,
was unfair.
we
Like, it was
remember.
just like,
Yeah.
it was unfair, man. And I mean, that's when we started to come into that whole Swaggerville thing, where,
Yeah,
we were like, if they're coming to Winnipeg, they're coming to Swaggerville. Like, that's just what it was gonna be. If you come here, everywhere you look, you're gonna hear about it, you're gonna know about it, and we're gonna dominate. And that's just the way it was.
yeah,
I mean, we like, as a defense, we never once wanted to rely on our offense to win the game. Like, it didn't matter if an offense scored 50 or 1 point, we felt like we were gonna win.
yeah.
So, like, that
Absolutely.
was it became contagious, and kind of the media really kind of drove it. Like, they learned about it through us always saying it after getting like an interception or something, and they put the camera on us, and we'd be like, swag, swag, swag.
Yeah.
And once they learned about it, they really pushed it, and then that's where it became like kind of what it became.
So, like you also mentioned 2011.
Mhm.
We didn't mention this earlier on, but 2011 was your year, defensive
Mhm.
player of the year. Did you know going into camp that this was going to be that kind of year for you, or was it something that I don't know. It's like, can you feel that in camp, being like, oh yeah, this is not I'm saying like this is defensive player of the year, but this is my year. Can you feel that?
I mean, I felt like that every year, but I mean, and I think really the thing for me in 2010, we had a very good team, but we didn't know how to win. I mean, we were young and wild. Like I said, we were like hungry wild dogs, but like we didn't know how to win. We lost, I think it was 9 games by like 3 points or less or something like that. Something really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew going into 2011 that we will be so much better. Like with just having the extra year of building continuity and chemistry and just being able to play with each other. Um, I knew we would be way better. But I thought 2011, I was like, this is the time where we're gonna win the championship for Winnipeg and go out there and put on for the city.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think twice about defensive player of the year. That never crossed my mind. But when you got guys like Jonathan Hefney and Odell Willis, who I thought had better years than I did, and then people would tell me like the year that I had was crazy, but I thought
Yeah.
the years that they had were crazy. So it was like we had multiple guys on our defense that could have easily won that award, and I just happen to be more of the fan favorite, probably because of my ability to return kicks, which gave
Yeah.
me a little bit of an edge over those guys because I was named that year. I was named the team's most outstanding player, the team's most outstanding defensive player, and the team's most outstanding special teams player. So maybe that kind of pushed it a little bit, and
Yeah.
it became real even at the award ceremony, I still wasn't sure I was gonna win. Like Jarrell Freeman, he had some crazy stats. Like his numbers were ridiculous. But in retrospect, he was on the field way more than I was, and
Mm-hmm.
their defense was nothing in comparison to where we were as a team.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that 2011 team was basically carried by that D. I was just looking at the stats of it, and you guys had given up as many points as the offense had scored. I think it was 432. So obviously the D was a big factor in getting to that Grey Cup, even. So
Yeah, I mean, we played inspired. I thought down the stretch with Coach Harris passing away and things like we just kind of we started out the gate extremely hot. I think we started out the year 7-1,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
and then we kind of tailed off in the middle of the year, where a lot of things happen, injuries happen, bodies start getting banged up, but once we started getting guys back, we got back on that track to get to the Grey Cup. We dominated in the playoff game. Um, and then once we got to the Grey Cup, it was anybody's ball game. I mean, if we could have just scored some points, we would have had a chance,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, that we live and die by playing great defense. And if we don't give up the scores, we win the game. So, I mean, we still take the blame for it.
Yeah.
So after that season, I mean, we know how it ended up. Going into 2012, you still got a very veteran kind of roster, but the only issue is now the delay to the stadium. So you're starting 4 games on the road instead. Did that kind of derail that whole stadium? Because Lapo ended up getting fired also that year. Like, did it start on a high and just quickly derailed quickly for you guys, or?
I mean, I think it started to derail in the off season, with the release of Jonathan Hefney,
Mm.
the trade away Clint Kent to Edmonton. I mean, we lose essentially two of our top defenders. And then I think even Odell Willis, I believe, got traded, and Philip Hunt went to the Philadelphia Eagles. So I
Right.
mean, we
Yeah.
lose some amazing players. I mean, and going into 2012, I actually re-signed a new contract, and I was told in the offseason that everybody would be returning. The same unit defensively will return because that was my sole reason for saying, you know what, I'm going to stake it out in Winnipeg instead of pursuing all these NFL opportunities I had.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, if they're not going to pay me money up front, I'm going to stay in Winnipeg and we're going to win the championship for multiple years. And then I re-signed, and people don't know I re-signed for less. And they ended up getting rid of the guys that I wanted to go to war with, which was kind of a slap in the face. And that was Joe Mack's tenure as the general manager.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Paul LaPolice gets fired. And, you know, it was a snowball effect in 2012.
Yeah. We don't usually use that name around these parts, brother. just to let you know.
To be honest.
I'm totally honest with you. We don't use that name. Oh my goodness. So we feel you. We feel you.
Dumpster fire, man. That was the worst. That was the worst hiring as a general manager in the history of Winnipeg football.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. We just know the stuff that's on the outside. We don't know the stuff behind closed doors, obviously, and that's one of them.
Brutal.
And as you're telling that story, I'm like, oh, that sounds like classic Joe Mack right there. Just to do that to someone, stab them in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was brutal, man. I to this day, like I demise. Like I was just talking to Clint Kent the other day, and we were talking about our time in Winnipeg and how good of a team we had and how they like really like dismantled our defense. Like, and I was just like, you know what? It's crazy to think about because what they're doing now, like defensively, we resembled exactly who they are now back then, but they have a much better offense. If they took the time to invest in our offense like we had on defense, we would have won multiple Grey Cups back then. So it wouldn't be considered a dynasty right now, or what they're building right now. We would have been had that.
Yeah, you could easily built off that 2011 D and build into some offense going into 2012. Yeah, for sure. Jeez. That's so disappointing.
Yeah. And from the outside, it just seemed like that dude didn't appreciate not just the talent that he had, but the contributions as individuals that builds the team. And the reason why y'all were so dominant and y'all built Swaggerville, he didn't appreciate that. He felt that he had some reach in the NFL or some reach in the States where you can just bring in anyone. So
yeah, man, it's a different game. I tell people all the time, Canada is a different ball game. And the people and a lot of times people get discredited for thinking like that people in Canada can't play. And I'm like guys, you got to understand, like all of these guys at some point had a stint in the NFL. Like they were fantastic college players. Like these guys aren't just like some Joe Schmoes off the street. Like they can ball. Yeah. And you see NFL guys that go up there and they think that they're really cocky when they come in, and then they get exposed and they can't cut it, and then people wonder why. And I'm like, you got to understand, like these guys aren't just playing against anybody. Like, and then, you know, to hear guys like Ocho Cinco say, you know, that he had that mentality coming in the CFL, and then seeing like and thinking to himself, like, man, these dudes can really play. Like that is a testament to the league and the talent that they have up there for the guys that's playing. Like it's really, you know, it's nut cucking time when you get out there on that field. It ain't gonna be like taking no plays off.
Yeah.
So speaking along that lines, who was the toughest QB or wide receiver or offense that you've basically faced in the CFL?
Man, you know, honestly, I think the Montreal teams with Anthony Calvillo, they were always good as ever. Like they had so many good players all around that it was just, you know, they were hard to defend, you know, with the SJ Greens and Jamel Richardsons, and you know, you had the guy that played in the boundary, the receiver Ben Cahoon. You know, they had, you know, Adrian Claiborne. I mean, they had guys, and then on defensive side of the ball, they had guys. They were a complete team. They were probably one of the toughest. You know, Henry Burris with Kenyon Rambo and those guys, Nick Lewis. I mean, shoot, playing in the West, like us in Winnipeg when we were in the East at the time, so it was a little bit easier. But playing in the West would have been crazy. You know, you had BCE with Dante Marsh and Corey Banks and all those guys. Like, I mean, it was some teams that would make you scratch your head and be like, yo, how are we gonna win this game? Like, we got to figure this out now.
Yeah, those are some tough teams, especially in the West there for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, it was some good ones. We played against some good ones.
Montreal. Oh, they're such a pain in the for Winnipeg fans for so long. I can't even imagine having to watch film and figure that dude out. Like one of the greatest passers in professional football. That's insane.
And it was he was like Tom Brady. It was nothing fancy about him, but
Yeah.
he just always got it done. Like, he had like this elongated release, like threw the ball really, like it was crazy.
Yeah.
Once I started to figure out how to maneuver against him, I ended up getting a few interceptions on him. It was like being like Ed Reed, like you're playing against somebody like Peyton Manning, and like you got to just figure it out. Sometimes you got to take
Mm-hmm.
a chance, and I started taking chances, and then I started picking them off.
We had like a highlight film that we made. Ray and Benny made it, so check it out. It's on YouTube. And actually, you got a pick on Anthony Calvillo on like a last second throw, and the pick was great. Like you went up, probably your basketball right there, dunking the ball. You went up and you picked it out of the air. But back to Anthony Calvillo, he doesn't look like an athlete, but I think Odell stunted into the middle. He saw Odell coming, sidestepped him, and then stepped up in the pocket between two defenders to launch that ball to the goal line. Like that dude could ball.
Man, he was different, man. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. He had some like Tom Brady-ish ways about him. Like it
Totally.
was just crazy to watch. Like it didn't look like he was very athletic at all,
Yeah.
but he got it done.
Well,
Right
let's
on,
move
right on.
to some fan questions, Benet.
Yeah, we have some on social media, some other fans to throw out some questions for you. So we got one here from Hadley. Favorite Bomber CFL memory?
Probably favorite memory, the game against BC at Canada Stadium, where we're down, we come back, they punt the ball to me,
Yeah.
down 3 with like a minute, maybe a minute, 50 seconds left, and I return it to like the 35-yard line on the other side of the field. We kick a field goal, go to overtime, and then in overtime, Dion Beasley picks sixes the ball
Yeah.
and goes yard, and we win the game. Like a phenomenal way to win the football game, like crazy.
That was
That's probably the best moment
insane.
I had in Winnipeg, like as a player. Like that was the most lit experience we had as a team.
So building off that, one of the other questions was from David, and he said, "What was your greatest football comeback as a player?" And he actually mentions that game in his tweet as well. So would you classify that one as your greatest comeback in a game, or
Yeah,
was there another one?
that was the greatest comeback for sure.
Yeah,
Like that
Yeah.
was like, yeah, we're down, and I'm like, I have the ability to impact this game. They punt the ball. When they punted the ball, I didn't feel the ball until like the 10-yard line. Like so I had to go yard to be able to get in position to even get the ball even remotely close to kicking a field goal. I thought I was gonna score a touchdown and send them home packing, on that return, but I ran out of gas, but then
Yeah.
kick the field goal, and overtime I was like, this is our game. Like we're gonna win this game. And then sure enough, Dion Beasley pick sixes that I was like, oh my God, that
Nice.
just happened.
Walk off. Walk off. That's awesome.
Oh, it was crazy.
we got another one from Judy, and this might be the same thing, but it's like, what do you consider your most memorable experience of your career? So maybe not just with the Bombers or at any point in the CFL or college or anytime.
In my football career, just I would there's a few, playing for Bill Cowher was a highlight. He was one of the most down to earth coaches I ever had. A guy that really he really like pushed me to be great every day, and it
Mm.
was like he showed me on a consistent basis that he trusted me as a player. Like he would call me in the office and say things to me like, you know, we're playing against Reggie Bush this week. I want you to play Reggie Bush in practice because I think you have the skill set to do the type of things in practice that he can do on the field. Like
Yeah.
things like that. Like, when the coach tells you they think you could play Reggie Bush, who I think is probably the most electrifying college football player of all time.
Yeah.
Oh
If
yeah.
you think I have the skill set to go emulate him in practice, I like you. Like, cause that is a big compliment.
Nice.
But it was other weeks like we play Warwick Dunn and it'd be the same thing. Like he like, I want you to go, do the things that he does in practice. And it was like guys like that, those were memorable moments. But I think just the hype in 2011, the Swaggerville, the whole season was just lit. That was like
Mm.
a highlight for me, winning Defensive Player of the Year. Um, but I think a lot of it is when you hit rock bottom, how you respond. Leaving Winnipeg was a rough time for me. Like it was like I didn't know what was going to happen going forward. For them to call me and leave me a voicemail to tell me they weren't going to re-sign me, that was kind of like a slap in the face. So it was like I was bitter,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it made that chip on my shoulder come back 10 times more. And then going to Ottawa, and then that expansion year when they came back into the league, we went 2-16.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was like one of those moments where you like, is football really like something that I want to continue to do? Like you can't. It's 2-16. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
But then the following year, we go to the Grey Cup. I mean, you bring in guys on offense like we should have did in Winnipeg, but defensively we were pretty good. Offensively, we needed more weapons. They went out and got Chris Williams, Ernest Jackson, Brad Sinopoli, and Greg Ellingson, and all these top dogs at
Yeah.
receiver. And then our team went from bad to the best in the league, one of the best in the league. And
Yeah.
we probably should have won the Grey Cup that year. But I mean, the memories run deep. And one of the things that I hated the most was, those times where we had to talk about the CBA and, all of that crap. Like I wish they could just figure it out where that the young guys don't ever have to go through that.
Mm.
Um, because the veteran guys, they push for deals that are benefiting them and not thinking about the future of the league. And going through that process really opened my eyes up about what guys really thought and what guys really wanted. Because I think that year in Ottawa where we had the CBA, we should have sat out. And but that gratification bonus or ratification bonus or whatever the hell they call it,
Mm-hmm.
it was like give the veteran players $8,000 or however many thousands of dollars based on how many years they play, and then that'll get them to sign this deal. Like that was like one of those tactics where you just basically holding cheese in front of a mouse and they're gonna chase it. Like,
Yeah.
but the younger players didn't benefit from that at all. It was like we doing this for the veterans, but the younger players are getting screwed. So
Mm.
like just I wish they had more equity in regards to that and guys that actually really thought about what they were signing before they signed it.
Yeah. Okay, we got one more here from John. So, who was the best trash talker? Could be on your own team or another team that you played against, but could actually back it up.
That I played against.
Played against, or even in practice, someone from any of your teams, even or wherever.
Well, Jonathan Hefney was by far the best trash talker ever. Like he never stopped. Like that was nonstop. Him and Odell Willis both like they never shut up.
Oh my
But
gosh.
but on another team, I would say Nick Lewis was a good trash talker. He was big for that. Um, Emmanuel Arsenault was good for that. Like,
Yeah.
guys that was talking but would back it up. Um, there was some guys. Most of the defensive guys are talkers though, and I was always on the other side, so I never got to play against them. But offensive guys, when they talk, sometimes when you start headhunting them, they won't say too much.
Right on.
That's fair. That's fair. Just we talked about players coming to Canada. What's the motivation? How would you market this game to players to come to Canada and even to new fans? What's a great thing about the CFL? You'd say?
It's a place where you can be yourself. You can not feel like you're such a celebrity where you can't live life the way you want to live. People are down to earth. The country's extremely clean. You can have a good time without having to worry about violence and all of that stuff. Although it does happen, but on a much lower scale than America. You could go home and sleep well at night and wake up and go to work and not have to worry about nothing. But you can play a great brand of football with guys that are like-minded, that want to get after it, and guys that are trying to make it and make a name for themselves. I mean, I think the game is on the same level as the NFL. The only difference between the two is that the NFL is backed by millions and millions and millions of dollars of revenue from TV and all these different sponsors and all of that stuff, where Canada doesn't have as much of that.
Yeah. I'm a huge Steeler fan, so you don't know how badly I want to talk Steelers with you right now, but we'll save that for another time. And you talk about attitudes and defense. The Swaggerville defense very much reminded me of that Ike Taylor, Ryan Clark Steeler defense, where y'all just held the team up and y'all even scored points for the team. So that defense was amazing. So shout out to y'all.
Man, that was a great those guys, man, being in the locker room with those guys on defense, they really changed the mentality of what guys believed in when they took the field. Like, playing with Ike Taylor and Ryan Clark and Troy Polamalu and, Deshae Townsend and Brian McFadden. Like, our DB room was so legit that it was like, you could put any combination of guys on the field and they would get it done. Like, it was amazing just to be a part of. And those guys, the way they communicate was like top notch and next level. So you weren't really seeing those defenses give up big plays because of their ability to communicate. And I mean, their athletic skills was off the charts, but it was a great team to be a part of. And the Rooneys do a hell of a job of running such an amazing organization. And that's why they won consistently for a long time. And they only had coaches there, in the past 50 years, they only had 3 coaches, where there's some teams that have had 3 coaches in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Or in the last 2 years, even.
Yeah.
Raiders.
Oh,
yeah. They keep a good foundation.
You're going to get me started, I'm telling you, with Mike Tomlin right now and talking about coaches. But we can't thank y'all enough for joining us. We enjoyed watching you play in both buildings, the memories that you left Winnipeg. I'm going to thank you on behalf of Winnipeg for what you left on the field, because you were one of the best defensive players that we've seen play in a long time.
Yeah, it was fun to watch.
I appreciate it.
Of course. Before we let you go, though, we do 5 quick shots with every guest. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. Give us the answer, the first answer that comes to mind. Don't worry. They're not dirty. We're not going to get you in trouble. It's all good. It's all safe.
Right.
So here we go before we let you go. Quick shots. Favorite city to play in as a visitor?
Montreal.
Least favorite city to play in as a visitor?
Regina.
Funniest teammate?
Jonathan Epney.
Nice. First teammate you want to have your back in a fight in a back alley?
Doug Brown.
Oh, yeah. Shout out. Wildest college environment that you played in, either a bowl game or a stadium?
Miami, the Orange Bowl.
Oh, my gosh.
Right on.
Again, thank you so much for joining us. The memories that you left us, the amazing play. We'd love to have you back again next football season or whenever you can make it. So,
yes, sir.
And if you ever visit Winnipeg, section 112, we'll have some beers for you there, and we'll enjoy the game from our section as well.
Absolutely.
All right, Benny, you have
Tell
anything
them
to
they got to get me in the Ring of Honor, man.
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
Oh, you're playing that Ring of Honor. Okay.
Yeah. I need to be in the Ring of Honor. Like,
yeah, Well, the numbers are there.
I agree on that one. Yeah.
The play was there. You're a leader on the team. So shoot, we're gonna start that campaign, are we? Is that what's going on now?
Yeah.
All right.
Hall of Fame too, or what? Yeah,
we can get behind that.
Hey man, I ain't in charge of that, but I ain't gonna say no. You know, somebody said, I heard through a little birdie that I got to get nominated for the Hall of Fame, like by somebody. So hey,
okay,
just putting that out there.
Let's see how that. Let's figure out how that works.
Yeah, do your job. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah,
the tape is there,
so they don't lie. Lie. Numbers don't lie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Benny, you have anything to say to our friends?
Just thank you very much, Javon, for joining us. Like Ray said, it was a pleasure and honor watching you on the field. Some great memories you left behind for us. So thanks again, and everyone, thanks a lot for listening.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave comments, leave some love for Javon Johnson. And in the words of Ed Whalen, in the meantime, in the between time, that's it. Another edition of Ray and Benny Talk Sports.
Hey, friends and neighbors, don't forget to check us out online on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Ray Benny Sports. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. Leave a like, leave a comment, tell us what you think.